Hey yo, welcome to FUZZ Devlog 0. I'm Shane, one of the team members working on FUZZ. We've been working on this project for about a year and a quarter now, and we finally feel like it's time to start a full-on devlog. And there are three main reasons why we're doing this. The first one is to get as much feedback as possible through our playtest on Steam, drawing attention to that, people playing it, and also the video comments, just seeing what people think and engaging with them, building up a community. The second reason is to prove that there's an audience for this game so that when it's time to start looking for publishers, it's less risk for them. And the third reason, definitely last but not least, is to showcase the realities of starting an indie game studio with little to no development or business experience, game development. And so for anyone interested in maybe starting their own studio or working on an indie game, or just interested in indie studios, that's the deal. So throughout the series, my FUZZ teammates will be hopping in, talking about their various areas of expertise, what they're working on the project. We're going to be building an immersive project that stimulates wonder and thought. So what kind of game is FUZZ? FUZZ is a hand-drawn action-adventure game where you'll be exploring the mysterious Eden Island as the last seed. You'll be using the tools and weapons of your environment as you collect them to engage in fluid aerial combat, physics-based and elemental-based puzzles, and restore your lost paradise. So that does it for introductions. Now we're about to be taking a look at the inspirations that set us down this path. For art and visuals, love Hollow Knight with their simple hand-drawn style with their parallax effect and the 2.5D. And the same could be said for Ori with their more painterly style, lots of detail, but still with that parallax. That is something, that depth is what we really like to build in our games, and you do that by using 2D art in a 3D world. And last, we have Inside, which inspired us to do this minimalistic HUD. Everything is in the game world with minimalist presentation. Next, we have the physics and elemental aspects of our game. So this is a lot inspired by Breath of the Wild with their elemental and physics systems, but also Inside again with their physics puzzles. We love these aspects in these games. We want to bring them into ours, but also add new ideas and bring them to levels that they have not been brought to before. And as for combat, the sandbox and pick up weapons as you go, kind of scavenging feel of Halo is definitely a big influence on our game. But also the fast-paced run and gun twin stick feel of Enter the Gungeon and the stop and you'll die intensity of Doom 2016. These are definitely what shaped our combat along with our new perspective. And then as far as story, we're doing a wordless story, also inspired by Inside. So Inside is definitely one of our biggest inspirations. They do this really well through their environmental storytelling and gameplay. Another game that does this well is Hollow Knight. Their world is rich with lore. Just from the world itself, you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. And then more recently, Elden Ring. Not only their environments are dripping with story and their large set pieces, but also the behaviors of their enemies tell you a story, tell you their motivations a little bit. Just really love that. So those are some of the games that kind of lit our fire and set us down the direction that we're headed in right now. Throughout the series, we'll be talking about the new ideas we bring to this and how we solve some of the problems that these kind of contradictory sources made arise. Before I was working on FUZZ, I was working as a graphic and motion designer for Renegades, mostly doing work for their headquarters. It was a great place, but I quit because I wanted to follow my dream of starting something. And it seemed like, I could actually be a good game developer. So made the switch to game development. When I was telling my friends, some of them thought it would be pretty cool to make a team of us. And they had unique skills that all kind of came together so we could make a cohesive team. My buddy Mike was taking programming classes at MSU. My buddy TJ was, versed in story writing and social media. And my buddy Corey was, he was very well organized and he had some project management experience, so he was just the right guy for project management. So now that we had the team and we were starting to learn about game development, we were starting to think about the idea phase, like what is the game about, what kind of mechanics are we gonna have. So originally our first idea was for kind of a linear story-based platformer where we had like this black and white line art, linear level sections, After we learned more about game development and we kind of wanted to make something more unique, we moved to flying rather than walking and more twin stick-like rather than platforming. We also went to more exploration instead of linear. We also made the switch to more colorful and detailed art rather than the simple black and white line art. We also made the choice to incorporate physics and elements as one of our key features. And then lastly, we also embraced the minimalist presentation and story of Inside. So now we had the idea, we had the team, it was time to start getting building. So at first we started off with a very simple, just movement prototype, building off of this Intro to Unity course we took. We ran playtests of this at Michigan State campus. At first they were understandably underwhelmed because you could really only just move.
But we did want to get in the habit of frequent testing and also just checking that this movement style with its slight floatiness wasn't off-putting to people. So the next thing on the agenda after movement was getting the shooting working, one of our core features. You'd think this would be pretty straightforward, you see it in a lot of games, but that was definitely not the case. Though there are many tutorials on YouTube, none of them were working for us. And it took us a long time to figure out what exactly the problem was. But eventually we realized it was with how we had our camera set up. So we use a perspective camera, which is mostly used for 3D games, but it gives 2D games this kind of cool depth effect that we really wanted to have as integral to our style. One thing about perspective cameras though is it can track the direction of the mouse, but it can't track exactly where it is in three-dimensional space. So it doesn't know if it's an inch from the camera or a mile. So this is a problem that we were kind of racking our brains around for a while. But eventually we found this thread and it solved all of our problems. So what we ended up doing was we created a XY plane on z = 0, which is where all the gameplay was happening. And we cast a ray from the camera to the direction of the mouse. And wherever that ray intersected this plane, that's exactly where we wanted the cursor to be in the game space. And then from there, all we had to do was find the angle between fuzz and this new point, and then create an object and send it towards that point. That ended up with this result. Doesn't seem like much, but it proved that we could overcome these challenges. And after you've been working on something for so long with no progress and suddenly it just works, it just felt really good. So now that the shooting was done, we could move on to some new stuff like making up some enemies for these to test the shooting with. Just some simple enemies. And then after that, we got moving on to our ammo system, which the thing about our ammo system is you collect ammo from the environment and then it is visually represented around you. So you can see how much ammo you have without any sort of UI. That was all pretty smooth sailing, but next came the elements after that. We wanted to have elemental pickups like water, fire, electricity, acid that you could spray out at a later point after picking them up from the environment. So we started with water. And so the idea was pretty much you could fly through this waterfall, pick up some water. This was kind of daunting because we had no idea how we were going to make this waterfall look good, be satisfying to interact with, and make a water gun with semi-realistic physics. But luckily, we stumbled onto a solution that worked better than we could have hoped for. Particles. This waterfall, water spray, and the water around Fuzz are all made up of hundreds or thousands of small particles. And if we turn on collisions, we can get this very nice physics happening with these things. Honestly, perfect for what we needed. This same method we used to build out our fire, electricity, and acid as well over time. Now that these elements were done, it was time to add some objects for them to interact with. The first thing we added was these logs. We got them so they could burn at various amounts, so you could just put a little fire on them and they're barely burned, or you could send them completely charred. And then you could break them into coals. Those coals could then be put out with water or reignited again with fire. And eventually we'd make these pickup items. So at this point, our prototype was starting to feel pretty rounded out, but there was one major thing that still needed doing, and that was building out our tether feature, which was one of our core mechanics as well. Basically, the idea for the tether is you can kind of cast out this rope or vine that's sticky and attach objects to yourself to move them, or even attach objects to other objects or the terrain to set up traps or just move objects out of the way, or for puzzle solving and such. One problem that we faced was Unity's out-of-the-box features did not lend themselves very well to building ropes. So we needed to look for kind of a third-party solution, so we hit up the asset store and we found gold. We found Obi rope, which did exactly what we needed it to and looked great doing it, might I say. Not sponsored, just really love that. Honestly, there was kind of a learning curve with Obi, so It took a while to get things going, but we got it to a point that we were satisfied with. And honestly, this was another one of those moments where just working on something for weeks and running into all sorts of obstacles, and then now it just works exactly as envisioned, it just felt really great. After pretty much every feature we added, we ran playtests, testing out various situations, people's reactions to things, whether or not these features were working with our previous features, just because with a lack of experience, we really didn't have too much of a frame of reference of what could work and what didn't. Even if we think something works, you never really know.
So at this point, we had all of the essentials built out. We actually kind of had a game here, very exciting. Still kind of a prototype, simple visuals, but we were ready to finally make our Steam page and get our playtest live online instead of just doing in person, which was very nice.
And now that we had this basic prototype made, it was time to move on to our next goal, which was to build out a vertical slice. And a vertical slice basically just shows what the complete game will look and play like in a small form. To do this, though, we'd need help in a few departments. The struggles we faced during the prototype development kind of showed us that we'd need to work with an experienced programmer if we wanted to have this game complete in any sort of reasonable time frame. And none of us had any experience with sound design or music composition. These things were very important to us because they help build atmosphere and add a sense of groundedness, so we knew bringing on experienced people for these roles as well was going to be very key. And this meant we were going to have to do some interviews. To be honest, this was very scary. I didn't expect it, but interviewing all these experienced people was the most stressful part of this entire project for me. And luckily, all that stress and time was well worth it, because now we're working with 3 very kind and talented people who are helping us to take this project to places we never thought possible. And starting up, we have Mike Maluski, who joined as our experienced game engineer. His skills have vastly sped up our development time, and he's also kind of acted like a mentor to us, helping us learn more about Unity and just the general practices of the gaming industry. Matt Wood joined as the sound designer for FUZZ, and he's been creating a soundscape with more depth and attention to detail than we could have hoped for. His skills with audio recording and Fmod add a whole new dimension to the world of FUZZ. And rounding out our development team is Kyle Miller, who's joining as our composer for FUZZ. He has been killing it. Every track that he's made has added atmosphere, character, and memorability to the areas, and his multiple instrumental talent and his technical sound skills are sure to leave an impact on people. And while we were assembling our development team, we were also laying out the plan for this vertical slice we were building. So basically our plan was to create the first sub-area of the game, which we're calling Dead Forest West. And within Dead Forest West, there's going to be 4 sections. We have the sourcing research facility, the fungal area, the forest proper, and the Dead Forest West landing zone. And together, these sections provide a taste of the various experiences the full game will offer, like an objective area, exploration areas, and then your living ship, your mobile base of operations, as well as resource collection and upgrades. And so we figured we'd start with the sourcing research facility, since this would act as a tutorial, and it also acted as an introduction to the mysteries of Eden Island. First, we reran a pass of just blockout art, but since we did want to turn this into a vertical slice and somewhat soon, we did kind of start on art right away, building it out. We built our scenes with 2D art, but in a 3D space, like I mentioned before, to give it this depth look. It did actually take more thought than I anticipated looking at other games of this style, but we got it to a point where we were happy with it. And then while the rest of the building was being designed and built by Corey and I, the technology that still worked in this long abandoned facility needed to be brought to life through programming, and Mikey was the guy to take charge on this. First on the list were the generators. So turning these on would provide power to parts of the dormant facility, for better or for worse. They'd power things like doors, elevators, pipes, hatches, etc., but they'd also power the facility's defense drones, the first tech enemies to make it into the game. Since the arrival of Mike Maluski, Mike Kraft has started specializing in enemy behavior. So he built out the behavior for these guys as well as all the other enemies we have so far. Building these guys kind of came with their own set of challenges, like getting their rocket launchers and thrusters to move properly, and having their lights and meters all act as intended. So after the facility's interactables and drones were all wrapped up, and the first pass of art was finished, we were finally ready to publish and get feedback on our second build of the game.
So now we finally had our second playtest out on Steam, which really felt great because we could put our new art, not just blackout art, into the public. That was very good, a huge milestone for us. And also, we got to learn a lot about this facility that we built. A lot of flaws we found, but that's the point. We're trying to find stuff like that. So great learning experience.
And that does it for our first year recap. Development was kind of slow moving at first since we were still learning the basics and we had a smaller team, but now we're cruising along as a full team and making progress. Anyone looking to give FUZZ a try is in luck because our Discord server is currently holding its first playtest period. Join our server to gain access to this playtest on Steam, and we're going to be keeping this playtest open on Steam for the next few days, so don't miss it before it's gone. The next one should be happening in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. The server is also going to be holding various challenges and events, which is very exciting. And we're also going to be updating people about the development through weekly videos, daily screenshots, and such. So if you're interested in FUZZ, please join. It's going to be a great time. And if you want to support our growth, a wishlist on Steam would be much appreciated.
So that's going to do it for Devlog 0. We're very excited to get started with the series. And next time, we're going to be taking a look at our current developments, kind of getting caught up from the end of this video to our current day.
So please subscribe to follow along, and thank you very much for watching. Oh, and one last side note, we are currently looking for someone to help us run and create content for our social media channels. So if you or anyone you know would be interested in a position like that, email us at contact@stackturtlestudio.com, and we'd love to hear from you.